So we've all been there. You start out with the promise of a new day, a reasonably curated to-do list, and a commitment and enthusiasm to make your art. And suddenly you look at the clock and it's the end of the day, and all you got to show for the 7 or 8 hours is a bunch of little piles of unfinished good intentions. This happens to all of us. Whatever your skill level, it is super easy to get lost in the various tasks that go into making art, and for good reason. Not only is the art a series of complex tasks, but we're often performing the tasks in these chunks of time either stolen from other commitments or in the spaces between emotionally and physically expensive commitments. And that's why I'm excited to talk with Rob today, because he has tons of experience juggling commitments, yet just concluded an unbroken streak of daily posts on his blog. And I can't wait to compare notes with him about how we both think about prioritizing our work to make sure progress happens. Let's get started right now. Hello and welcome to the Lean Into Artcast Creative Work Chat episode. And this is where we explore a creative problem, things that come up as being visual storytellers, teaching artists, and learners. My name is Jerzy and Rob, I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist.
And I'm Rob Stenzinger, a UX designer, interactive maker, and also teaching artist.
Good to see you again, Rob.
Good to see you, Jerzy.
So where did this topic come from? Why are we talking about prioritizing and finding focus and,
Never heard any of it.
Yeah. This is alien territory to us. But actually, it came by way of a leaner who commented on one of our YouTube videos. And he said it was on episode 352 where we talked about feeling overwhelmed. So appropriate. He says, hey guys, I'm having a problem with productivity, of getting things done that have to do with prioritizing my day, including art. I haven't got much done because it's hard to focus when there's so many things that I have to do during the day. Could you possibly discuss something about it on your show? I would really be appreciative. So that said, first of all, thank you for the comment. Getting feedback from you about what is interesting to you and what you would like to hear us interact with is exceedingly useful. I also want to say, I feel like the discussion we're going to have today plugs in pretty well, or will plug in pretty well, to episode 351, which is making your own time tracker, which is more about a week-to-week approach of prioritizing your stuff, but maybe step back and have a broader discussion about how we think about this and how we've engaged with it, how we failed at it too, right? So what do you think?
It's an excellent, timeless topic. I mean, there are whole books and podcasts and tons of things available to help people ponder through this. And honestly, I'm looking forward to talking with you about that, because I mean, you set us up so well in 351 about the flow of a week, right? But then I think this feels more immediate and that's stuck in a moment, which is it's a little different.
Yeah. We talk a lot on this podcast about Sri Seah's emergent task planner trademark. And the idea behind it is that you have 3 goals you set for the day, but you leave space for things to emerge as the day progresses. It's sort of like it's accepting the ambiguity of the day to day and leaving wiggle room for it. And I love that idea of accepting that and almost embracing it, saying like, here's the 3 things I want to do. Here's 3 more things that might come up, probably will, because that's what happens. So like, I love the implicit suggestion of this is a manageable thing. This is something you can actually do. And I feel like this is the kind of thing, the reason it's evergreen too, for me, is it's something that I'm continually attending to. I don't set it at the top of the year and go like, okay, I don't have to think about it anymore. I've got my prioritization list done. I've got like my rubric on the wall there, and I can go like, is it this, this, or this? Then no, I'm not doing it. Or is it this, this, or this? Yes, then I'm doing it. I constantly go back and revise. And as a matter of fact, this year I'm playing with an idea of doing a quarterly check-in with myself. So we're entering our second quarter of the year, and I just had a 2-hour meeting with myself looking at my time tracker for the year and said, okay, where did things fall off the plate? Where did the weak points happen? Where did I not meet my goals? Where did I get bewildered? And where did I win? Where did I succeed? So let's look again at what our commitments are for the second quarter, and make a hypothesis of how all this stuff is going to shake out in my, weekly planner. So, and I don't know if you've ever played with Lisa Congdon's time blocking. I mean, time blocking is a thing that I think lots of people talked about, but I saw a workshop with Lisa Congdon where she was talking about time blocking. I don't know if you're familiar with that idea.
Not familiar with that specific example. So Lisa Congdon and time blocking. What's up with that?
You can do a search for it. Lisa Congdon, time blocking. She was also on the Creative Pep Talk podcast recently and talked a little bit about that. But basically, it's like trying to make some of your airbendy tasks more earthbendy. And for those who are new to the podcast, we describe earthbending tasks as things that require our full attention. So like what I'm doing right now with Rob is an earthbending task. I'm performing a podcast live with my friend, and I can't be looking at my phone or answering emails while I'm doing that. Right. Yeah. Well, I know that the definition of a good podcast host is a malleable one. So there might be other people who do that. It's like, look, I'm just that busy. I'm like, okay. But airbending tasks are ones that can be done in flexible, discrete chunks. I'm going to put 30 minutes on it here, 20 minutes on it there. I'm going to do it in my car for a little while I'm waiting for my wife to get out of work. That kind of idea. It's something that has a flexibility in terms of place, time, and the level of attention that you have to it. So every Saturday, I have a drawing session where I draw what I'm going to finish on my now Tuesday live stream, and I'm watching a movie while I do it, right? That's an airbending task because I don't have to give the drawing my absolute full attention. I'm multitasking, as it were. So anyway, that's all to say is that Lisa Congdon's workshop was really about what happens if you say, these 2 hours, I'm going to proclaim to myself that this is for that airbending task. I'm going to treat it more like an earthbending task, right? And it's something that she, even in her workshop, described as that you check in on this constantly. You're constantly attending to it and saying, okay, well, that didn't work. So how can I adjust? How can I adapt to this thing? She really talks about adaptability a lot.
I guess that was really close to my interpretation of airbending already. So if I'm getting it, where I always thought airbending tasks, floated in like maybe a bit of a flexible queue with like kind of a group of these things need to get done. I don't know when, but in the moment, I always I can't remember, like few years back, we talked about I don't know, what is this stupid metaphor, but picking a fight with your tasks or whatever. So it's like being in the dojo, being in a training session, and which task will you engage first? But once I engage, I guess it is earthbending. This is what I'm about right now. Is this task? But the moments, it wasn't intensely scheduled. It was available and flexible for me to grab onto when the opportunity itself. And that's what I felt was the nature of the airbendiness, where earthbending is that thing is scheduled, show up then and be there and all that. But I guess showing up and being there wasn't ever a flexible thing. It's just a matter of part of the when and how.
So yeah, I mean,
interpretation.
Yeah, it sounds like we have slightly modified interpretation of this. My definition falls more into it's an interruptible task. I can show up and be focused to do it, but if suddenly my phone rings or if my wife calls, it's I can attend to that, right? And
sure, and pick it up and put it down. Right.
Yep. So what I'm playing with this year, because and I'm going to be talking more about this in one of our ad spots today, is I got a project that just got announced that I got to finish in 18 months. And I did actually a pretty thorough budget of how much time it's going to take me to do it based on a lot of experimentation. And I need at least 10 hours a week at the very minimum. That's the absolute. I can't go any less than that per week to work on this in order to finish the job. So I'm playing around with this idea of okay, these 2 hours, I'm actually putting them on my calendar so nobody else can book that time, and I'm actually giving it to this task now. So it's an Airbnb task in that it can be interrupted if life gets in the way, but I'm sort of like raising the stakes on the negotiation. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
the office door is closed. Pause before interrupting me. Make sure it's important because I need this time, kind of thing. Whereas, like, well, if I'm teaching a class, right, we don't want to be that guy who was on CNN and his child came in the room and revealed that man had a family.
Yes. Unbelievable.
As an aside, there was a Folgers commercial where there's like a woman in a business meeting and like the kid keeps popping his head over his shoulder over. She keeps like holding her mug in front of his face. I'm like, what's the big deal? Like, you have a family. We know this. We're all working from home. It's okay.
It is weird and bleak. The kind of the sort of life work split in our and it's, I mean, it's pointing to, you know, something that's essential of our time.
Yeah.
And it is weird. And I know that, anyone having whole aspects of their humanity show up in a professional context, it's something that it's taken me time and practice to get used to as well, and sort of question my assumptions with, having big emotions at work that are just about having a hard time and being in meetings where people cry and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, the reality of humanity is way more complex than the transactions that we choose to dedicate chunks of our lives in order to have money to go to hospitals and eat and stuff. Anyway, but yeah, and for people's bubbles to be that popped, I think in part that person, I tried to filter it out, but over time you see that meme over and over.
Yes.
I'm guessing that person was a gruff grump, wanting to live with his big world map. Like, look at me in my castle. Oh no, it's a child. My image is broken. It's like, whatever.
Yeah.
You're a jerk and a dad. Whatever. You're not.
Well, he might have just been anxious too. We don't know, but
I don't know.
But yeah,
Who cares? I
could
be wrong in that. I don't care. I'm a jerk and a dad. And this is about me too.
It's one of those perfect examples of like the thing that I think you and I rebel against in this world. So
right, hence my mini tirade. But yeah.
So Aaron Polk is here. My dear friend Aaron he says, I'm feeling so personally attacked by this stream because we're talking about time blocking and prioritizing. And yes, I know Aaron is one of those people who has struggled with this a lot the same way I have historically. Aaron was there in the studio with me when we were working on the Warren Commission report, and there were days where we had to touch 18 pages of art at any given point in the day. And it was... you want to talk about encroaching on the rest of your life. It was like all I thought about. And I know I told the story on this podcast of like when I went to bed one night and I had my tablet in my arm and I was like moving my pen on the tablet while I was like half asleep. And Anne was like, "Are you drawing in your sleep?" And I was like, huh? And I literally, I did not know I was doing it. Right. And it's like, she
Sorry
turned
for laughing at that. But yes. Are you fill in the underscore blank in your sleep? And yeah, I've been that. I've vacuumed in my sleep. I have, certainly drawn, but like especially coding, where I'm like, hey, didn't I write this already? And yeah, you just sort of hopefully notice that and then start to manage it, which I think is tied into the thematically this topic.
Well, I think those are the two ends of the extremes on this. Is like Aaron is somebody who like ships. Like when Aaron says, I have this done by Thursday, it's done by Thursday. And sometimes at great personal cost. I've been there, and I've been there personally myself. Right. And then the other extreme is like you get buffeted around by all these different forces in your life. And then suddenly you look around, you're like, I don't have anything like really recognizable to show for this time. And that is demoralizing. So on the one end, you got a demoralizing kind of end of the day. And the other end, you have an exhausting point of the day, neither of which point towards enthusiasm, health, and stick-to-itiveness, So I thought it'd be worthwhile to dig into this idea of how we think about how to prioritize things to help make this more manageable. How have we succeeded in this in the past? Or what's our attitude towards it right now as we're experimenting with this. And I wonder if we could talk a little bit about stepping another step back. How do you identify what you want to give priority to?
This is always timely. This is never not a concern. There is no knowledge that is not power is the situation with this. All right, that's one of the screensaver quotes that goes in what was it, Mortal Kombat 2? Anyway. There's okay, so where do you want to go now?
So
there's so many different possibilities dealing with okay. Oh, so like getting focused on the funnel of like, where do you focus in general?
Yeah. Like, how do we determine what rises to the top? It's like, this is more important than that, so that we can say, because I think part of prioritizing is learning how to say no to things. And that's another one that I'm really bad at. I am practicing it. I just said no to a fairly lucrative gig that would have been nice money, but I just don't have the space for it. And I had to say, I'm really sorry. Can you please reach out to me again in the fall? I'd love to do it, but I can't in July. No, I can't, and it sucks. It sucks to have to say no to things that are exciting. Right. And that's why I wind up getting in over my head all the time, is that it's really hard for me to say no to something that feels intellectually exciting or very aligned with my principles and mission. So,
oh gosh, yeah, those are the worst.
Yeah,
right. I mean, it's easy to say no to the things that are, I guess, noise. They're in the way. I don't believe in that. I don't agree with it. I don't, it doesn't fit. So I guess you can have, hopefully you self-interview and have some general idea about like where you want to go. I think a useful self-interview is one we've rolled out many, many, many times, right? So answer these questions. So like, what do you love to do? What are the communities that you care about serving? What are tools and methods that you believe in? And what do you think is fair for like something you would call sustainable trade?
Yep.
And any one of those things could easily cause a no.
Yep.
Tools and methods you don't believe in. Well, yeah, if everyone has to sit around this table 20 is in unsustainable hours because we're crunching on a thing or whatever. It's like, hey, no. Is there whatever. So that's tools and methods, and then obviously rate, and but also community, where you're like, gosh, that sounds pretty cool, but I don't know if I can also learn to like how I care a lot about, I don't know, kelp farming, or so, I don't know, like whatever it is, right? Where you're like, yeah, that's just beyond, the space, and I'm already full, right? So I don't know. That's an example of saying stuff only gets to be invited here if I, think about these matters. What about so you're thinking about other things like capacity, stuff like that?
Well, I'm thinking about capacity, and I'm thinking about measuring how much I want to spend out of my capacity based on some pre-existing criteria or new criteria. So like when I think about, I had the experience exactly one time in my life, and I will never do it again, where I double booked myself. And I didn't realize I double booked myself until a week before the thing. And one organization I booked myself with was somebody I had been working with for a long time, like for 5-something years. The other one was a brand new client. And so I had to decide, who do I honor in this situation? Do I honor the new client in the hope that it'll create more, relationship revenue, building things together, or do I honor the person who has been working consistently and in good faith with me for a long time? So I think about that. Like, okay, were there any prior commitments with this organization? That becomes part of my determining factor. Do I have a good relationship with this organization?
Loyalty, right?
What?
I mean,
yeah,
loyalty.
Loyalty, yes. Loyalty based on good faith interaction and aligned values and mission. I don't my
Not
loyalty
based on being crushed under the boot of power, right? But like loyalty for love.
Yes.
Here.
Yes. My loyalty is very expensive. And then what?
I'm just joking. Yes. I love that. Yeah. Your loyalty should be expensive. It is a very precious resource. And that it's good to be proud of that. It's worthwhile. That is an powerful tool in this whole conversation, right?
Yeah, and I don't mean just expensive in terms of money. I mean expensive in terms of do you show up with commitment along the same lines? And if you repeatedly don't, I'm going to summon the words of He-Man from Masters of the Universe. Said they continue to make bad mistakes. You might want to think about whether you want him for a friend or not. But many people do learn the error of their ways. Everybody deserves a second chance. You get two. That's that. Anyway, but that also
it's awesome. I know that was a mashup. That's Jerzy and He-Man. I assume that was pure He-Man. Okay.
Anyway, and I think about is there any clarity in terms of ship date? Is this something where I can measure it against my yearly capacity and say okay, this is something that's going to take me 3 months to do, and then I don't have to do it anymore, right? So other things can fill in the space. Or is this more ambiguous? Is this something where they want me to attend to it, or I want me to attend to it for a really long time? Is this a 3-year thing? Is this a personal project that I'm going to work on for foreseeably indefinitely? Yeah.
I have a classification for this. I want you can observe, is this situation an event or is this situation a lifestyle? And the events have more of a containment to them. Yes, lifestyle has a containment to it, but it's a whole lifetime and it's way more ambiguous. And but like an event, you can say oh, I'm working for a client, or I'm an employee, or I have a situation of my own doing or whatever, because my independent business endeavors. And this thing came up and it's a real thing to deal with. It's a new, do I add this on the pile, but it's only here for a certain amount of time. That's an event. And you can decide we do need to crunch on this thing. And you're like, do we? But if we, and if the answer is yes, anyway, yeah. But some places, situations, habits are more lifestyle and ongoing. And anyway, and those are a big deal, is what I'm hearing too, right? I mean, lifestyle, that bigness means cost.
Yeah. Yeah, and cost means a lot of things. That's something we keep talking about on this podcast. Is when we say cost, we're talking about emotional cost, cost in terms of energy, cost in terms of money that we could be making doing other things. I kind of want to talk about the situation, shift gears. We're talking a lot about people who freelance and take on work. What about, and maybe we take a break before we do this, what about the personal thing that you want to do after you've met all of your other commitments, right? Because I think I'm inferring in that comment that inspired this episode that was part of what was going on. It's I've got this thing that I really believe in, and whenever I attend to it, I wind up with a lot of stuff that doesn't look like finished stuff. How do I prioritize this, and how do I prioritize the tasks within the thing? That's what I'm inferring, and I think that might be a cool place to explore what it looks like for us when we're in the work session. How do we find that immediate focus? That's something you hinted at the top of this one too, right?
All right. I think that sounds awesome to pick back up and dig into. All right.
Sweet. All right. So we're going to take a little tiny break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about all those things that I described. Before we do that, we got to thank some people who make this project possible. And those are the folks who support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/LenaToart is the website. It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote if you believe in the work we're doing here. If this is helping you think and do useful creative work, you can support us for as little as $1 a month. I want to thank 5 people who've been supporting us on a regular basis. Dave Sri Seah. Hey, I just talked about you. Thank you, Dave Sri Seah. Katherine Sugrue, Kelly Ishikawa, Rachel Ross, and Ashley Knapp. And also, we recently launched the Lean Into Art Labs. It is a monthly 90-minute lab session in a place where we host a creative group of professionals developing their projects. The constraints give it meaning. It's a chance to show up, to share what you're working on and what might be blocking you, and we'll be there to encourage you and find new possibilities. It's also a place to work in the presence of others, whether you choose to share or just hang back. Each session held on the third Wednesday of every month is facilitated by one of the 2 hosts of Lean Into Art. Both Rob and I have decades of experience in teaching and facilitation of creative groups and processes for all kinds of projects. and each session will be a unique one-time experience. Sign up to reserve your spot for the low introductory price of $10 per month through our Patreon, patreon.com/lean2art. If you're still wondering, labs? What is that? Let's just put it this way. Do you need a place to show your work in progress? We can all use encouragement and feedback. Have you found the gentle creative project pressure of a due date or demo day useful? Then sign up for the labs at patreon.com/lean2art. Thanks to everybody who supports us there. It means a lot.
It really does. Thank you.
Okay, I am going to play some music to get us to the next part because not like two middle-aged men dancing to anime songs. That's what you came here for.
I know what we've arrived when there's a supercut. I wanted there to be a big loop, but I won't ask for it again. That's it.
You only asked once. Okay. So this idea of like, what about personal work and when we're working on stuff? Because like you've got things that have clear deadlines in terms of guitar fretter, in terms of workshops that you've made. These aren't things where you're being contractually reached out by a client, but you put a due date, or maybe sometimes the due date is externally imposed when like Apple says, hey, we changed everything again. You got to change your thing again. Isn't that fun? Apple's the best.
Yeah. Well, just like when we visit friends there and you go to someone else's house, there are rules. And, sometimes you can't wear like pants made of knives at my house. I'm saying don't do that, please. So fair enough. It's Apple's house, but that comes up, right? Where it's like, oh no, I was working on other things and my app will be nuked out of their universe if I don't do something. And yeah, that does create like a surprise deadline. Mm-hmm. But I do try to have my own, planned ahead deadlines based on like, well, roughly when do I think I can get this done? And among these other commitments and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's sort of a map of, well, it helps focus a work session, right? But it's not like what one work session's about. It's like, this is what I'm up to as a map of these different projects with these different deadlines and priorities. So, and which is one, and you mentioned the whole the daily shipping thing. I wanted to turn down the heat in the intensity of the daily shipping with all the other projects that aren't daily shipping. So yeah, I made more capacity by saying I'm only going to post once a week.
Only.
But I did a 100 in a row of every day. So I feel like I'm good.
Yeah.
As far as that practice.
So I think nestled in there is something that I think is a sort of a perspective check to take with yourself on. I mean, is it perspective check? What am I thinking of? I think there's two kinds of skills at work when we're attending to our work throughout the day. At least for me, this is what I encounter. As I encounter things where I'm more highly practiced at it. So like when it comes to doing a quick sketch for a Bear on Bear live stream or something like that, I don't have to, the leveling up isn't getting in the way, right? Maybe there's a couple hiccups where it's like, that's not what I wanted. Let me try again. But I'm not in the weeds. I'm not lost. Accomplishments, or rather forward movement, can easily be measured when it's something I've practiced a ton. But then there's skills that I'm using where I'm leveling up these skills, right? So this would be like, I'm updating my website with new software. I'm trying out a new plugin, or I'm messing around with like another OBS setup, or my job as a festival organizer. That is constant leveling up. That is constant. Like, I thought I knew how to run a festival. This is a big, complex boat, and I am working with a lot of personalities now. So there's a lot of days where I feel like, did I do stuff today? I put in a lot of hours, and so I feel like that's the quality of experience for me, is like between those two things. Like there's skills where it's like, I feel like I'm in the weeds and the result of effort is not immediately apparent to me. And then there's things where I have more skills developed, and this is something I can check off on a spreadsheet. Did I finish a page today? Yes. Pencils are done, inks are done, check. Right. And that measurement counts, like seeing the check marks happen in your spreadsheet or in like watching that pile of paper grow. That's not nothing. Right. So I think like it's what throws me is the ambiguity of when I'm working in when I'm acquiring skill through the making of the thing.
I wonder if there is a difference.
Cool.
Because I'm hearing you're describing two things that I think, wait, Jersey's really good at both of those things. So is the difference outcomes? Because the kind of stuff that you can witness and observe after putting in the effort is very different as far as creative project output. This is one of the things where why it is such a big concern for me to be practicing other hats and roles, where it's like I creative process things for a variety of media I have down, but then nurturing those projects as business endeavors is where I'm working more to grow, right? Mm-hmm. And in part, it's because of the tangibility and how I'm wired, because I love the clear output. I feel satisfied and right in the world when I see a thing I made, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, but the output is one of the things I'm hearing what you're describing that's really different.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a better clarification of what I was trying to get at here, is like the measurable output or the visible output or the output that we are most accustomed to relating to is part of what makes certain jobs feel more pleasant than others. And I feel like the ambiguity, when we face ambiguity with these tasks, something that Aaron said in the chat earlier is like, if everything is equally important, then nothing is important. Therefore, how do you choose? Right.
One of the factors of how do you choose is how naturally enticing and desirable does that task sound, and the change in the world that you will bring about by engaging with that task. Like both, like I like the how, I like what happens, and those are easier tasks to just say, okay, I don't have to ask, I'm already going, look at me go, this is what I do, versus like I don't always do that. Or I have to stop myself and then push myself to do this other thing.
If I may yes and on that, there's also things that are super meaningful to me, but I feel an intense amount of anxiety before starting it. So, for instance, sitting down to outline a story. I know I can do it. I have boatloads of evidence that I can do it. And I have enough evidence that when I've done it, it's like pretty good. Like I feel like, okay, I don't have a problem standing in front of this. This makes me happy. Yet, every time it comes down time to start writing an outline, I am just stopped dead in my tracks by that resistance of like, and there's a lot of different rationale and reasoning that's going on in my brain of like why I shouldn't do it. And so I think sometimes even with things that I love doing, there's like an eat the frog kind of aspect to it, to use that old, chestnut. But like but I would use a gentler version of, because first of all, I don't endorse eating animals, especially, a live animal. But there's this idea of just keep the pencil moving from Natalie Goldberg's Writing Down the Bones. But also I've seen this in my classroom where I say like, they're like, I don't have any ideas. I don't know what to do. Oh, and then you see them they're getting wound up in their own anxiety. I'm like, just start throwing some lines down. Put some lines on the paper. That part of your brain will activate and you'll get to flow. But you got to throw the lines down before you can get anywhere. And I think that getting over that hurdle feels sometimes like an eat the frog moment. This is an unpleasant thing that I got to do, but I got to do it in order to get that into that good place of making forward momentum on this thing. Does that make sense?
Totally does. Yeah. There's a lot of different language surrounding, like how, well, I mean, you can deal with this at all ages and stages in life where, let's say you're, you either were a kid or you're raising a kid who deals with the label of, gifted and talented. And it's super common to be frozen in like what to do and not wanting to do and resisting, because perfection is expected, right? If you expect yourself to continue to do whatever high level of performance, gosh, I even saw is it Sandra Gorman, the poet laureate?
I think that's right. I'll double check.
And I'm sorry if I got her name wrong. And let's see, some kind of, tweet flowing by my feed or whatever, but mentioning the, sort of a now what?
Amanda Gorman. Amanda Gorman.
Amanda. Thank you. So someone, very accomplished, young adult, going, bravely facing the next adventure, but then feeling a little daunted. Right. And I think, past success is also baggage in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, it really can be. And I know I've had students who are paralyzed by praise, right? They show up to my art class, and where they came from, they were the gifted artist in their school. And suddenly they look around, there's 12 other kids, and they're all good. And like, oh no, like I can't compete in this environment. And first of all, I have to go like, no, we're not competing. We're supporting each other. That's rule one. We build each other up. We don't break each other down. But I've had like an actual intervention with some of these kids where I bring in my stuff from when I was a child, and I'm like, oh yeah, like here's some of my old stuff that like was really not that great, and I didn't know how to make it better. And like one of the kids will point to a page, they'll be like, that page is awesome. I'm like, well, you know what? I showed that to a friend when I was really stuck on it, and he gave me some great pointers. So sometimes showing your work to people means that you'll get good feedback. They'll make the work better. I feel like I have to have that conversation with myself sometimes. Teacher Jerzy has to visit me.
That is the essence of this, though, because it's a bit of metacognition, and it's the executive function.
Yeah,
it's saying like, in this massive stuff that you are, and you're including the story, how your brain works, and your neural reality, and just being a human with a psychology, accepting that and saying like, I'm stuck and there's a thing I can do. Even though I feel this, I can do that. And that's a separation thing that I've found the only way I get through every day, because I'm just a jerk in my back of my head saying just unhelpful things. And yeah.
I have a friend who's actually put a name to his inner critic, and I think that's such a great way. Like he's turned it into a character that he has a conversation with. And I've tried to think about what would my inner critic's name be, because I listen to the quality of that person's voice, and I don't know what their gender is if they even have one, but it's like it has like this, oh no, oh too bad, this is the moment where we have to find out that you're no good, you're failure at this thing after all. And it almost like. Well, his voice almost has the quality. I just called it a him, so I guess it's a male. It almost sounds like Andy Kindler. Like it has like a Andy Kindler kind of quality to his voice. I don't know why, because I love Andy Kindler's comedy. But anyway,
just moments ago, I realized my inner critic is, I'm pretty sure it's Ghostwriter.
Wow, dude, that's intense.
I just was like, hey, who I just looked back in those dark corners, and I thought it's a skeleton. It's a skeleton. I don't know what it is. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh crap, it's on fire and it has a leather jacket. It's Ghostwriter. I'll just talk to Ghostwriter from now on.
Aaron's bringing up, isn't that what Lucy Bellwood's 1001 Demons is? And yeah, that's true. Like there's the demon dialogues that Lucy published a couple years back, which were like very gentle and inclusive and welcoming conversations. Very just having a really gentle voice with this nasty little imp who just wants to upend everything that you're doing. So actually, that'd be a good thing to go check out. Go do a search for Lucy Bellwood's Demon Dialogues, 1001 Demon Dialogues, and that'll give you like a template for engaging with that voice. Can we also talk real briefly before we wrap up and maybe do a second spot? We are in a year right now where a lot of us have our capacities really stretched. Yes, a lot of us who are lucky enough to have jobs where we can work from home can work from home. But that's not to overlook the fact that we are now always around our families, our roommates, our partners. in a way that we hadn't been previously. And while you and I made this very gentle yet defiant comment about the guy who's too rigid about this is my workspace, children don't belong here, that's not to take away the fact that those intrusions add up, and you were just constantly just like talk about loose knees on the boat. The boat's going like this all the time. It's just rocking like left and right. You're like, okay, I'm keeping my loose knees, and it's been 13 months now. So what say you got like an hour? You got 2 hours. You've had a full day. You are wiped out, dude. How do you ramp up to get back to a creative space again? Or do you?
Yeah, there is no universal answer for this, because everyone, how you meet that moment is your truth, and whatever you're ready for, privileged, empowered, capable, whatever capacity you have, like every bit of it, it's, like, this isn't about being prescriptive. Like, the right answer could be take a nap. And, so hopefully it's whatever's happening, you're doing some kind of thoughtful, nurturing combination of choices. And I totally understand and empathize with the desire to create, even though your butt is kicked. Like, I could be, I just, part of how I'm wired, I am not being bro. I am not flexing. I am saying that I care about making stuff so much. It hurts my heart when I don't sometimes. Yeah. And even if I'm doing other important stuff. So then I'm just having a dialogue with myself. And then, like, through that, I come up with an answer that works for me. And if, being the show that we are, it's saying like, well, having a bias toward, maybe you're trying to find a way to reach for the creative endeavor, even though you're feeling a bit spent. Understandable, but worth thinking about, because feeling that spent sucks. But if you're feeling that spent because you have other needs, those needs are probably more important, right? But if you're feeling that spent because of the stress about creativity, but you really do have an hour, you really could use this for that, then it's kind of up to your own executive function and, what works for you. And one of the, with super, I don't know why, how availability heuristic. It's like, if you get a red bicycle, you're going to see red bicycles everywhere. I just had a conversation like this with a friend of mine that, I was going to mention on next week's episode, but, like, I was interviewed by Craig Andera on his, Get Smarter and make Stuff and Get Smarter podcast. And, something came up. I've known Craig for decades, and something came up that I forgot that I think might have been a little bit of a seed somewhere in my brainscape about that affected 2-minute practice. There's something that Craig would do for years when he was not taking on a project he wanted to do, and he could do it, but for some reason paralyzed, right? Not doing it. He started doing it 1 second at a time. He said, I'm going to go to the thing, and 1 second is my commitment. And so, like, through that promise, like, just get moving, right? And saying, I can literally touch this project for 1 second or not, but my world is vastly different if I do this, right? And all of a sudden, 1 second becomes more, and what have you. And you can build capacity. And this is literally something I'm going to mention for sure in the next podcast too.
Wow. I also think there's, like, when you talk about executive function, there's like negotiations that we make with ourselves. And there's ones that I make that are more broader, long-term, in terms of, like, this is a 24-hour commitment I made. And then there's ones where it's like, I'm changing, I'm altering the deal with Lando Calrissian. Pray I don't alter it any further.
Totally.
Because I'm working at being more mindful of listening to my body and trying to feel like when I'm feeling something, and if it's extreme enough, I don't mean extreme like Fred Sanford, Elizabeth, I'm coming for you, coming to join you. I mean extreme enough where it's like, I feel different. I feel different than I did a second ago. Why? And this literally happened 2 days ago. I was sitting at my desk and I was typing emails and I felt my heart racing. And
Crap.
yeah, and not like where I felt like I was getting dizzy or lightheaded. It's just I felt the racing heart that you get when either you've been exercising or you're anxious. And I'm like, okay, I've been sitting here for 2 hours, and for my heart to be racing, I'm not in a good headspace. I'm not going to do good work. I'm not going to be thoughtful about how I attend to anything, whether it's drawing or whether it's emailing or whether it's doing some coding on a website. We're going for a walk. I'm like, but Andy Kindler comes in. It's like, but you can't go for a walk. Then you're a failure and you're wasting your time. Yeah, I know, Andy. It's okay. I just named my character. It's Andy. Like, Andy, we're going for a walk and we're gonna breathe for 20 minutes. We're just like, I'll put a cap on it. I'm negotiating with you. I'm taking 20 minutes off of the plate that we had for this. I think we need it so we can show up and do better work. We're gonna do more efficient work, more thoughtful work, and we're gonna be happier with the work if we show up with an open heart. And the only way we could do that right now is to go for a walk. So self-care, like Aaron's asking in there, how do you prevent self-care from feeling like a waste of time? And I think that's part of the dialogue for me is like recognizing the fact that it's about me. Absolutely, it's about me. That's why I gave myself a raise. It's like I care about me and like my health and my wellness. But also, if Andy gets too vociferous about that, don't be selfish. I'm like, well, okay, but we'll do better work for people too. There's multiple benefits to doing this. If you're so worried about everybody being mad at you, how about we take a break and then we can do better work? What do you say to that, Andy? Well, okay. So
you're demonstrating that whole conversation thing of the, like, someone like Andy or Ghosty can take up so much space. They appear like the entire universe, and they're not. And that's a huge acknowledgement, is that this is not the entirety of all things. And now I can include other things in saying that, well, I'm actually pretty sure if I attend to my fitness and my health and whatnot, I'm actually way better at doing this job. And that's where, it's almost like externalizing that, giving it a voice. There's more to it than it's not just that simple, but in a way, hopefully, honestly, you wouldn't let other people treat you like that either. And so giving it a voice becomes more of a dialogue where it's not like, oh, this is me and I'm telling no, it's Andy. Shut up, Andy.
Yeah. And
just settle down for a second, because look, there's more stuff to this matter.
And while I was on the walk, I was like, hey, Andy, check out that birch tree. Isn't that pretty? It's springtime.
You're rubbing Andy's face in it. Oh, no.
Yeah, I was literally doing that the whole walk, and I was breathing into the nose, out through the mouth. I'm like, hey, check it out. Hey, whoa, hey, they got some really cool lights on their porch. That looks really cozy at night. That kind of thing. Like, really not trying to distract it like life is beautiful or anything like that, but more to say like, no, we're going to be present for this. We're going to be present for this. And then when I go back, we'll get back to that. Don't worry. I've got this. And then there's another aspect to it. The longer term one that I hinted at is I think of a line of dialogue from a C.S. Lewis book that I really love because I've found so much utility in it for it personally. Is a character in one of his books is deciding on doing an impossible thing the next day. Tomorrow I have to do something that is so, and I mean, literally in the book, he has to fight Satan. It's like just a mortal man has to have a fist fight with Satan tomorrow. No weapons, and they're naked. So it's like you're gonna have a naked fist fight with Satan tomorrow. And he's going through all of the visions of what that battle's going to look like in his head. And then he says in his inner voice, he says, tomorrow you will have done this thing. And he said he thought of like all the unpleasant things he's ever had to do. The night before, he says, tomorrow you will have done this thing. State it as a fact that's already happened. Tomorrow this will have happened, right? And I found that to be really useful for making commitments to things. Like, for instance, when I started jogging 6 years ago, boy, I was not in shape, super not in shape. Like, I remember telling you about it when I was first doing it. I was like, I really thought at times I was going to die. And, but the night before I first did it, I said, tomorrow by this time, you will have run at least for 10 minutes, and then I did, and then I did it again, and then I did it again. So like, there's a little bit of that too. Like I make sort of concretizing those commitments the day before I find to be extremely useful, stated as a fact.
Mm. That is, I mean, you're fine. Again, you're acknowledging that you're made up of so many different things and concerns and matters
Yeah.
and, ideas. So because you've primed yourself, like so you've ethically primed yourself by doing that. Priming is useful when you sit down to address anything. If someone's facilitating, they're like, "Hey, welcome to gym class. Welcome, whatever. We're going to do this. We're going to climb ropes and see that and this, and then we're so describing what's ahead and just being factual about it is a kind of yeah, it's a kind of priming. Um,
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and you're stripping away all of the emotional context around that. This will have happened. You know, it's a fact. It's a thing, and it's okay. You're going to do that. Um, Well, you got to take one more break and then wrap up our thoughts on this whole idea of prioritizing and managing all the big feelings around prioritizing.
no problem.
Okay.
Easy peasy. Couple sound bites where boom boom.
Oh yeah. In 3 minutes, we're gonna come back with the 3 things you need to know in order to, quell that anxiety and go out there and crush the day, destroy the day, demolish it, put it under your boot and squish it to the ground, turn it into mush.
Eat it. Then
Yeah.
boom. Who's the boss?
Eat it, poop it out. Eat it and poop it out. That's what you're gonna do with your day. That's how awesome these tips are gonna be.
Dang. Wow. All right. We are not gonna follow up on that, but oh man, I thought I guessed that and you went extra far. But, honestly, who knows? Some folks might be like, "Hey, that's a business model. I'm going to go with that." Good for you.
Yes. Yeah. Casey is in the chat. It's the Sergeant Slaughter approach. You're gonna work till you wish you were dead, and then keep going because you're afraid if you don't, I won't let you die. Oh, I love that line because it's pretend. It's pretend. That's why I like it.
Pretend is fun. It's you gotta laugh at this stuff.
All right, we're gonna come back in a couple minutes. Conclude our thoughts on all this stuff, and then before we do that, we got to thank some other people who make this show possible. And those people are us. Let me find my thing. Here we go. So if this is helping you think and do great work, a great way you can support this project is by interacting with the stuff we make. And the thing that I make that I hope you will interact with is my new upcoming graphic novel, Baron von Bear and the Case of the Two-Faced Statue, coming out in 2023 from Iron Circus Comics. Baron von Bear, expert in the occult, never once wanted to be an adventurer, but when years of hard work are demolished along with an ancient stone guardian that rendered harmless his collection of dangerous magical objects, he will have to enter the fray at last. And he will learn, to his dismay, that those objects are not at all what he believed. So you can go to baronvonbear.com to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or for free, you can subscribe to my mailing list to get some exclusive looks at the process of making my next middle grade graphic novel. Join me in the journey of making this book at baronvonbear.com.
Woohoo! All right, that is awesome. And if if you still have some support and love, you would like to buy another product that it helps make this show happen and be nourished by it. Well, I have a workshop called Listening Like a Coach, which is available at gum.co/LLACWS. And you might think, well, I'm an artist. What do I have to do with coaching? Well, do you ever advise other artists? Do you ever teach or mentor or are in situations where peers are just asking you for advice on things that they're stuck with? Well, and in that process, would it feel better to just tell them what to do or to help them get unstuck in their own thinking? Well, that's what this workshop is all about. It's that process of coaching. It's a very learnable thing. It's got this, you'll learn really simple starter methods and advanced methods for coaching conversations. So if if any of that sounds really good to you, there's a variety of levels to get this. You can get it as a downloadable video workshop with a PDF and of listening tips and worksheets to help you connect with how listening has helped you, and then you can actually do a Q&A call with me, or just one-on-one, or me and your whole team. There's all these options available at gum.co/LLACWS, Listening Like a Coach.
All right. So let's think about how we want to, like, are there any other things that we want to consider or wonder about before we wrap this one up, Rob?
Well, if we revisit the question, just ask, well, how do we think that went?
Mm.
So when you're prioritizing a day, so that's another granular loop to be like, oh, I've got the big thing, and then roughly this week, but then this day, doing that kind of quick conversation. That's something, allocating yourself. But then the hard to focus when there's so many things that you have to do, right? Um, did we miss anything related to that?
I just want to jump on some language that you threw in there, because this actually relates to our last mini workshop episode, opening up the analytic eye, is evaluating what came before, middle, and after as a beginning framework for thinking about how to evaluate your day. So something I try to capture, and I'm not always successful at this. I'm actually probably only do it once a week, but I have a space in my day planner where I capture I have an invitation to capture qualitative data. What good happened? Did anything good happen? And I also put critique in there, right? Oh, this, and this led to me only getting 30 minutes to work on this thing, right? But I try to at least once a week do a reflection on how did the day go? How did it start? What happened during the thing? And how do I feel about it after it's done? And I try not to turn it into a hair shirt session where I'm, castigating myself. You failed. You failed again, dummy. I'm trying to say, like, okay, just the way I would use analytic eye when I'm evaluating a Transformers episode. How do I feel about really using some language from, say, Hinduism, which is or Buddhism for that matter. It's like, I'm not my body, I'm the witness. What did you witness today as you were engaging with this thing? And can you talk about it in a factual way? And can that provide you with some data for evaluating how to approach it tomorrow? This is an incremental thing too, right? I have, like I've said a bunch of times in this podcast, I have 8 or 9 years worth of day planners that I've tracked almost every day of my life or my work life in. Mm-hmm. And I can go back 5 years and see places where I was really stumbling in the dark and didn't know what I was doing. And, you can watch the progression happen where it's this used to take 6 hours, now it takes 4 hours. So that can also give you a really great tool for, giving you some of that measurable growth. Because there's how you feel about it in the moment, and then there's how you feel about it when you step back and look at it too.
Yeah, witnessing growth isn't always a simple thing, because it happens so incrementally. Day to day, you experience a day and another day, but all of a sudden this stuff accretes where you realize that, I have sanded a whole ton of floors, painted a fence, waxed all these dang cars, and what do I have for it? But then Mr. Miyagi walks up and is like, all right, show me sand the floor. Right. And you're blocking mm-hmm. a martial artist's punches, and you didn't realize all that skill built up in you.
Yeah.
Which I think is a nice metaphor.
Well, it's very on nice brand for us, for sure.
What's that?
It's very on brand for us, that's for sure.
Fair enough. Yes, I love so Karate Kid metaphors aside, it is an example of how you don't notice the stuff building up in you, and then having some kind of moment to let me really look and see that's a really useful resource for you. So your journals are a possible source of essentially a Mr. Miyagi point of view. But then you also have your past work and all that too. That is good reminders to say I have finished these things, and this is my progression from just an output perspective. Mm-hmm. So a lot of ways to find that. I wonder, as far as I was earlier in the pandemic, pretty puzzled about work schedule and timing and all that stuff, because of taking on the role of, well, I have a more flexible schedule with my professional commitments, whereas my wife doesn't. So then I'm, doing school day organizing support and, all the meals and all this kind of stuff and house maintenance, et cetera, et cetera. And, pretty different kind of flow to my day. And I thought, and one with sometimes we're unkind where we do stuff and we don't acknowledge it. So I wasn't fully acknowledging all the stuff I was doing, and I wasn't noticing like where the heck capacity was. So I actually used a spreadsheet and with 24 lines and said in 24 hours of a day, where is time? What can I do? And what kind of time exists in these different blocks? So you don't have to do that every day, but when you're facing a day with a bunch of stuff, if you acknowledge the stuff that is, for sure going to block you, but then see, well, where is there space, and try to make a deal with yourself to use the space if it's really there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's great.
Because
Yeah.
if you're just expecting it and it's not there, then that's no fun.
Well, no, and I'm reminded of another line from another writer that I admire, which was like looking at history is like looking at the ocean. When you stand back, it's all smooth, and you get close and you see the white caps. And when you're in it, you're trying not to drown. And you can't make good decisions about how to manage your schedule or your projects if you're only trying not to drown. And so it's worthwhile to step back and look at it from a broader perspective, to sound not to be too end of the sitcom kind of, blowhard platitude, but I do think that like I've benefited a lot from doing my quarterly check-in, then doing the weekly check-in, then the daily check-in, looking at it from all those perspectives, so that I can make more realistic answers to questions in terms of, can you do this?
Those are really useful cycles. So if you're someone used to doing, producing creative work, what tends to help. How much thinking do you need to do to accomplish an illustration or write a chapter or what have you? And it's a certain cycle. And then in longer cycles, you finish bigger work. Well, you also have, the cycles of your career and life and where you're trying to go and all that. So if you're checking in at different granularities at different times, which is, something we've talked about quite a bit with the topic of goals and doing design sessions to pick the right thing to work on and all that stuff. These are separate, useful, nourishing things. So yeah, I mean, having, and I know a lot of folks will have a built-in approach, but if you think about it as, if you're stuck in the moment, you can, make a promise to just work for 1 second, right? Or longer. 20 minutes is a useful chunk of time oftentimes. But then there's, that day, okay, that's another useful granularity. Then there's a week and month and all of these granularities don't have to matter all the time, but then they are pretty good resources. And honestly, I thought the water metaphor was a more elegant way to say what I just said.
Well, I'm glad, and I just feel like if we coined another T-shirt in this episode, it is the word introspection. It needs to be just like right across the chest, like in like the most broy font, like Gold's Gym, but just put introspection. But like somebody lifting up something or thinking hard on something, but whatever it is. But I feel like that's what we're really talking about a lot in this.
A buff brain pumping introspection is I'm starting to see, yeah. Merchandise.
Followed by eat it and poo it. Yeah. Which is actually an Eddie Izzard joke, I think. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's an Eddie Izzard joke. But anyway, okay. So thanks everybody for downloading, listening, and watching. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another live stream. Please consider liking and subscribing to this video. If you aren't following us wherever you're watching us, please consider hitting follow, telling a friend that this is meaningful to you, helps more people discover the show. The audio podcast appears at leanintoart.com and patreon.com/leanintoart. Until then, I've been Jerzy Drozd of rss.jdrozd.com.
Oh, nice. Well, and I'm Rob Stenzinger, and you can follow my work both at leanintoart.com and at interactive-storyteller.com.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.